Welcome back to another episode of the Wild Wisdom Podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa Finnig. I'm so excited you're here with me today because today's guest is a huge inspiration for me and has opened up my world of working with horses. During her 20s and 30s, Kathy Pike spent extensive time in the wilderness, running rivers in Alaska and the Grand Canyon, rock climbing the mountains of the West, skiing the backcountry of Utah, windsurfing in Hood River, and biking remote parts of Utah and Europe. And it all provided her ample experiences in nature and working with Mother Earth. So living in the woods in remote locations for long periods of time also provided her with the ability to be attuned to the subtleties, complexities, and rhythms of nature. So during this time, she developed a deep respect for Mother Earth, the four elements, and all creatures. So all of her experiences in outdoor adventure, healing modalities created the perfect foundation for her journey and work with horses. She is the founder of the Academy for Coaching with Horses, and I attended her retreat last January and set to attend this next January, where she just expanded my knowledge and personal practices, personal development, and hands-on healing with horses. And I can't even tell you, like spending 2 to 3 days in the desert with a herd of over 100 horses, the energy that surrounds that is incredible. So I'm excited to have her as my guest on my show today. And so she can share with you why horses are so powerful, not just in the power that they have themselves, but in how they can help us heal and connect with ourselves. So for all of you who are out there driving, cooking a meal, taking me along on your walk, don't worry, because there'll be links to everything we discussed today. And there's going to be a lot of links, lots of resources to help you get started on your path. They're all at alyssafinnig.com/podcast. But before we dive in, this episode is sponsored by my upcoming 8-week Wild Wisdom Yoga Therapy program beginning in January. If you're ready to try a new holistic approach to address the root cause of your chronic pain, anxiety, depression, or habitual patterns that you're ready to finally let go of, and get back to living the life you desire, you'll want to join me for this incredible program using yoga, pranayama, meditation, and chakra balancing. Go to alyssafinnig.com/online program to learn more. I won't make you wait any longer, so let's go ahead and dive in today with Kathy. So Kathy, thank you for coming on to the show today. I really appreciate you being here. You're an inspiration for me, and you've really, attending your retreat really has exposed so much in the way of working with horses. I always like my guests to share a bit about their background and kind of what led you to where you are today in your creation with the Coaching with Horses programs, retreats, trainings, all of that.
Well, I grew up actually originally in Maine, but I've been out on the west side of the United States since I was 19 years old. Headed west as soon as I could. And, I've lived mainly in the mountain towns. I was an extreme athlete in Park City and really enjoyed a lot of skiing and rafting and rock climbing and all that sort of activity. And then I moved over to Colorado. And during those years, that was pretty much my 20s and my 30s, when I wasn't running around on the earth and enjoying the outdoors, I was doing massage therapy. I also became a life coach. And as I was a life coach, I started to speak at international conferences and ended up writing a book about the chakra system, talking about the 7 energy centers in the body and how people can utilize those within their coaching business and then for themselves also. And then from there, I ended up developing the Mind Body Method coach training program, which is a way to help clients speak to their own bodies, start dialoguing with their own bodies and the information within the body as a source of becoming more conscious, developing congruency, understanding the unconscious energies that are lying in their bodies so that they can shift those energies and get more in alignment with what they want to create in the world. So it's been a very interesting path. And then, of course, as you know, the horses came to me when I was on the coast of Oregon, writing the chakra book, Pathways to a Radiant Self. The horses came into my life And they came the day after 9/11 when I was sitting on the beach. And it was beautiful, quiet, calm day on the Oregon coast, which was such a juxtaposition to what was happening in New York City and the East Coast. And I watched a woman cantering down the beach bareback with another pony on lead, or ponying the pony, as you would say,
Mhm.
horse talk. And it was, my whole body responded so strongly. I mean, I could feel the pounding through the sand. I was sitting on the beach, and she flew by, and she was such an inspiration for freedom and for grace. And the ocean was sparkly, and it was just an amazing day. So I promised myself, if she turned around and came back, that I was going to get up and talk with her. And I did. I ended up walking down the beach and connecting with her, and she invited me out to visit her farm and her horses. And that's where I actually met the horse named Hope, who I wrote about in the book. And my path with horses began. And what's happened through the years is a merging of all of the different things that I've done in my life into this very special and unique work with the horses.
Well, and I love that. And when you talked about that feeling in your body, I've experienced that myself. And that's probably why I resonate so much with your work. And it was my friend Wendy, who she is Lakota Sioux, and she has a herd of 9 horses, well, 7 horses and 2 ponies. And she's who reconnected me with horses because I was around them when I was young. So it'd been about 20 years. And by spending some time with her and bringing my niece to work with her and her herd, I was like, I have to desperately be around horses. And then did some searching and found your retreat. And then that completely solidified everything. Watching you work and dance with the horses, all the workshops I did with everyone else. So I can not completely understand because I'm not you, but I know what that feels like when your body is telling you, this is what makes me feel alive. This is what I need. So I appreciate you sharing that story with our audience. So, because I'm sure there's moments where they've had the same thing. So tell me a little bit more about the way of the horse and the mind body method with the horse, and how horses are so much of a mirror to ourselves and what they can teach us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. First, let's really talk about the horses and why we are so drawn to them as human beings. And there's many, many, many reasons, and there's many, you know, endless, unlimited ways in which horses teach us about ourselves and how we interact with the environment and each other. A few that I could touch on today, as far as the Native American traditions, horses are a power animal. So they teach us about our personal power. They are very powerful in their movement. They're very powerful in how they interact with each other. And they teach us how to have balanced power versus being dominant or submissive. And so I think, especially in this particular time of our evolution of human beings, this concept of how do we have balanced power? How do we have co-creative power? How do we have power which honors both beings? And horses are continually teaching us this, even if we're interacting with them the way that you and I do, or we're more working with them in a training realm, or using them purposefully for riding or for working on a ranch. They're constantly teaching us, they're constantly communicating with us. The thing that I find that I'm really so fascinated with is that a horse's heart is about 10 times larger than a human heart. And their brains are about, our brains, I should say, are about 7 times larger than theirs. And as human beings, we tend to depend on our brains and to make our decisions from the brain and from our thinking minds and thoughts. And we pay less attention to the heart. And I think we've been conditioned in our society to do this. And it's very common, it's very accepted, and we've become quite unconscious about it. When we get in connection with horses, or um, we get next to them physically, even, seeing a picture of them can evoke the same feeling. But when we're with them physically, their heart field, I believe, does something to our heart field. And, right now I'm very passionate about all the research I'm doing on the heart field, on the heart itself, the heart as an organ of intelligence. So when we get next to those horses and their heart's 10 times larger than ours, it activates us into our own heart space. And it activates us into a place where we're fully present. And we're fully present within the moment, but also there's an opportunity for us to become more body oriented and more connected to the messages, the desires, and the passions, and the natural intuition that lies within our hearts. So I see this, I see a lot of things on an energetic level. And this is one thing I have seen over and over and over in the 14 years that I've been doing this work, is this concept of the heart field and what it looks like at that energetic level, and then watching people go into process with it. And, the horse, unlike our human counterparts, wherever we go in the world, for the most part, people are judging us, whether they're aware of it or not. They are judging our hair, our dress, the way we speak, the way we carry ourselves, our education, who we are connected to, what we do for our profession. There's all these layers of discernment and mainly judgment and conclusions about who we are based on those external circumstances, where the horses actually don't do that. They don't even really care about the external. What they're really paying attention to is who we are from the inside out, meaning, are we emotionally congruent, which would mean for them that we're safe? Are we presenting ourselves in an authentic way? Are we presenting ourselves so that what we're thinking and what we're feeling is in harmony, in unison, in truth? That's what's most important to them. So when we as humans get with horses and we stand next to their heart that is 10 times larger than ours, and we can be in that unconditional accepting space where they're sensing us but not judging us, to me, that space alone can be pivotal for people. And I've seen it over and over and over, where they finally find a place on the earth where they feel that they are safe to be who they are and that they are fully accepted. So their presence alone can be transformational for us. And to me, that's what I strive to create with my clients when I'm working with them with the horses. From that, of course, and as you've seen, many, many, many different things can happen. So yeah, let me take a pause because I have a feeling you might have a question.
Well, no, I love where this is going. And I've seen this for myself and for my niece. My niece is 14. We're about to take a couple days in the southern part of Indiana and just go in the woods. And then we'll end Friday with going to my friend's ranch and spend some time with her. But for me personally, it's the feeling of being supported. I mean, I've totally cried into many horses and also of helping me reclaim my power. I would say that the horses helped me start this podcast, and just realizing what I was good at. And seeing my niece, she's 14, so at that age where you're trying to find yourself, and it's not a fun age sometimes. And seeing her just let go of whatever's happening in her life and building confidence just by being in the presence of such a powerful animal. And so I totally know that. And I'm trying to share that here in conjunction with my friend Wendy in Indianapolis. And that's why I have you on the podcast, to share with everyone worldwide even more, to share your message, because I think it's very profound. My big passions are about, as a yoga therapist, to get back into our bodies and listen to our bodies and connect with nature, Mother Earth, animals. So all of this resonates highly with me, and I know will for our audience. So tell me, you're talking about the way of the horse and all the heart, and which everything you speak about is just wonderful. And so just go ahead and share more about, what you've put out there and why, and anything you want to share.
So coming back to the horse again, so if you imagine in your mind a horse and next to it a human, and that horse's heart, the actual physical heart, is 10 times larger than the human's heart. And then you think of the electromagnetic field around the heart. And there's been a lot of research done through the Heart Math Institute around the heart energy, the energy field of the heart. So whatever they're saying about the human being, you can multiply it by 10 for the horse. And, they have different illustrations that show how far this field goes out. Ironically, though, what I found out in the last year or so is that even on their illustrations, the distance of the field was actually determined by the limitations of the equipment that they were using. And so, in all actuality, our heart fields are unlimited. And if you look at the chakra system and the energy centers of the body, the heart energy center is the bridge between the physical, mundane, earthly existence into the higher realms of spirituality. So then if we go back to the horse and we look at, wow, okay, the horse's heart is 10 times larger. In many, many ways, they have the wings that we can fly upon to move into our heart space and to start to live from these higher realms of existence versus the lower energy centers where we get caught up in all of the negative conditioned emotions that we might have from our past, where we actually can be very unconscious of those patterns. So activating the heart space allows us to begin to put into place a different pattern within our being. It helps us to start to open up pathways to new thought, and new thought which is more aligned with who we are at that authentic level versus a conditioned level. Now, many people will ask me, well, are horses conditioned like human beings? And the answer I have for that is absolutely. I adopted a wild horse, and he was 5.5 when he came in, and he was probably gelded at 5. So in the wild, he was free to procreate or attempt to. He ran wild with other bands of bachelors. And, I actually have a picture of him getting released by the BLM when he was, I think, 1.5. But for 5 years, he lived in the wild. So he was conditioned differently than a horse that's raised in a more domesticated situation where they're taught to do this or that for the humans. They're taught to back up. They're taught to lead a particular way. They're taught to have a particular boundary that they're supposed to follow or not. Some of them have no boundaries because they haven't been taught that, right? Where Corazon, my Mustang, his conditioning was, I have to be completely connected to my instinctual understanding of my environment so that I can fight, flight, or freeze. And usually, the horses are going to fight or flight in order to protect himself. So his understanding of energy, of the environment, and the level of congruency within the environment was off the charts when I got him. Nothing like any other domesticated horse that I had worked with. And his ability to distinguish when a human being was being authentic or incongruent was, again, so much more highly attuned than any domesticated horse that I worked with. So whether we're wild, domesticated, or a human being, we all have conditioning. And we figure out how to survive our environment according to what the environment's presenting us. And that's going to condition our behaviors, and it's going to condition our belief system. The thing that's really great about working with the horses is that once we start to become more body centered, just like a horse, all horses, regardless if they're domesticated or wild, are more body centered than we are as human beings. So when people come to work with me, I use the mind body method coaching to help them come into their bodies and start to pay attention to their bodies at a very primal level, really. You know, I'm guiding people to come all the way down into their sensory awareness, just like a horse is. And most people do not have the vocabulary for sensory awareness experience. And we teach them that, and we teach them how to track in their bodies and stay in their bodies regardless of what's arising in their body. And through that process, the individual, as they're standing there with the horse or working with the horse, gets to refine their understanding of who they are at that physical sensory level. And with that comes choice. Once we can stay with anything that we're feeling in our body, and we can stay conscious during that process, we can start to take down the walls of conditioning. We can start to make significant changes about who we are in our life, all through being present. And that horse's natural state is to be present. They have to be present in order to survive, especially the ones in the wild. They have to be on it. So they don't have the verbal communication. They do all their communication more through body language and through that invisible communication with each other. And when we get with them and we become more horse-like and we enter into the herd and we start to activate that level of intelligence in our own bodies, then so much more is possible for us. So they're amazing teachers in that way. What I see that happen so many times is that people, and I speak from my own experience, we have difficult times in our childhood, difficult times in our early years. We have traumas, we have letdowns, we have betrayals, we have jealousies. We have all of this stuff that happens to us. And as human beings, we intellectualize it, we stuff it, we dissociate from it. We try to find a way to deal with it, which is not usually healing, it's avoiding. And then we grow up and, you know, whether we're 40, 50 or 60 years old, we're like, okay, who am I? I don't even know who I am anymore, because all of that unconscious energy is running the show and we're not even aware of it. Where the horses, they can experience trauma and it can stay in their body, but on a day-to-day level, they feel something, they experience it in their body, they make a choice, they take an action or they don't, and then they go back to grazing. We as human beings, we feel something in our environment, we feel something in our bodies, we judge it, we try to move away from it, we try to avoid it, we stuff it, we don't engage with it to see if it's really true and to decide how it might be our intuition or our old conditioning. Instead, we just try to get away from it, and it leaves us completely powerless. We have no power if we cannot be in our bodies and be dialoguing with what's arising in our bodies. And if we're in that particular state in our life, then the body's running the show. The body's running a show at a very unconscious level. And so we just go back into looping into old behavior patterns, response patterns that don't give us the answers. They don't give us a different experience. They don't give us the change that we're seeking, nor do they allow us to be in our bodies and to be creating from that deep, authentic place that is aligned with our heart energy and our greater purpose. So this ability to be body-centered, when I first developed the mind-body method coaching, I was doing it over the phone, and I was doing it in conjunction with the Pathways to a Radiant Self chakra book that I had written. And I was seeing amazing results, really quick results for people. And at the time, I was also training other coaches, and they were asking me, "Well, what is it that you're actually doing?" And from those coaches asking me questions, I was able to develop that model. Well, then what happened was one of those coaches had horses, and she said, "Well, Kathy, I want you to come up to Canada, and I want you to work with all of my clients with the horses." And at that time, I had just moved back from Oregon. I had just made friends with Hope, and this door with horses had just opened up for me. So I flew up to Canada and I worked with all of her clients, and not all of them, but a large amount of her clients with her. And I write about this in my book, Hope from the Heart of Horses. We were blown away. And I was blown away because using that mind body method, coaching, was bringing people into such a high level of congruence at that sensory level that the horses, their heads would go down, they would be licking and chewing. The horses would come up and bump the human being on their body where they were holding the tightness, holding the memory, holding the contracted energy. The horses would just communicate by taking their nose and bumping the client, just like they would with each other. And through that process, the clients were releasing at such an extraordinary level that the changes that we saw were unbelievable. So I knew in that moment, I was like, okay, there's something about this particular model that the horses are really resonating with. And it is creating a communication between horse and human that is more the horse's language than the human's language, because it's about the body and it's about coming down into that sensory awareness. Now, so horses, I believe, do this all day long. They're in their bodies, they're sensing, they're feeling, they get this information, and again, they respond to it. We as human beings, we've cut off that intelligence. And without that intelligence, again, we stay looping in our conditioning versus being able to move into our authentic nature and making key distinctions about what we're feeling and making the break from the old conditioned patterns that actually lie deeply ingrained in our physical body. But once we identify them, then we can start to make changes within that. And that's when the habits that we've been trying to break for years, finally we make the change because we've gone to that level in the body. The opening that we've been looking for that we can stay with finally happens because there's a part of us that now is available and free because of the release of the old energy pattern that was in the body. And I know you know all this because I'm sure you experience it when you're working with people in your yoga, right?
Yes. I mean, when I was out at your retreat in January, I was like, this is what I do with humans. And, but, for me personally, having the horse component, I'm totally drawn to that. But what I find is that by people dropping into their body, whether, yogic practices, working with horses, or the combination, like your mind body method, it is that the wisdom of the body. I mean, that's the whole reason why I called this the Wild Wisdom Podcast, but it's the wisdom of the body that lets us, it tells us things. And if we just listen to it, and what happens, working with horses or other methods, some people can't cognitively or intellectually talk about their experiences or how, you know, or understand. And so when you use working with the horses or some other mind body modalities, when you get into that body, that layer that you're talking about that has that wisdom, you're able to release these patterns, these things that aren't serving you anymore without having to cognitively talk about it and discuss. It's profound.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I think that people can sometimes be blown away. And I think we're actually conditioned as a society that we should intellectually understand everything and be able to process through everything through that intellectual level. And for me, working with the horses offers a mystical experience that is beyond words. It's often beyond any sort of intellectual understanding. It's about going into a field of information and stepping into a way of being that, for me, is all heart space. And when we're in the heart space, again, it means that we're way beyond that mundane kind of physical existence that we've been programmed to kind of survive in, a life based in fear, a life based in all these emotions like jealousy and anger and frustration. We drive ourselves. We are constantly competing, and where are we really going? And so many people don't stop and actually ask that question. But when we do the healing at the level that you're talking about, and something shifts and we feel it energetically, we feel it through our sensory awareness, we feel it moving through the body. And when we're standing with a horse and we have our feet planted on Mother Earth and we are out in nature with the sun or the breeze or, maybe the sprinkles of the rain, the leaves falling in the fall, the smell of fresh grass, whatever it is, it evokes a sensory awareness through our senses. So we open up at that sensory level through what we smell, feel, touch, taste, all of that. And then we're opening up internally at a sensory level with what's the energy that's moving inside of us. Well, in those moments, our physical definition that we're used to living by through our mind no longer can exist. And what happens is our energy and our perspective broadens just like a horse. A horse has like a 360 view of the world. And to some degree, what happens is our energy field, the energy around our body, opens up into a much wider receptive state of being. I call it an acoustical way of being, and I see the horses as very acoustical beings. They're open to receiving the information that's in their environment. They sense it, they feel it. They're not separate of it. And we as human beings in our everyday life, running our agendas and our to-do list and our 300 gadgets that we now all own, that is not an acoustical life. That is a life that's contracted. Our focus is very predatory. We have two eyes in front of our head. We get very narrow in our focus. And when we narrow in our focus and our space, our energy space contracts in, we are not open to receiving those intuitive messages. We are not connected to all of life any longer. So this state of being, this acoustical state of being that I experience every time I go out with my horses, and when I do my exercises to become more body-centered, my whole being opens up in a different way. To me, that is where we connect to our divine. That is where we connect to our higher self. That is where we leave the mundane world and we begin to have the more mystical experience where we can receive communication from our divine. We can receive communication from that horse, where we get in touch with a part of ourselves that we've left behind. And, they're such incredible guides. And they have a way of holding that space. Again, imagine their hearts 10 times larger than ours, and holding this amazing space for us to come in and to be more like them. Unfortunately, many people don't see their relationship with horses to be of this nature. Instead, the horse is an object for their desires, an object for their goals, an object for them to achieve their rewards or their wins or their whatever they are looking to achieve by riding that horse. And many times that also is a very mystical experience when that horse and rider becomes one. But in all of the places that I've been where people are riding horses, that particular experience is very uncommon. There's actually more of a separation where the horse is an object. It's something to move. It's something to demand something from for the human's well-being. Where this work I see as a communion. I see it as a communion with nature, a communion with this amazing being, a communion with self, and where all of the natural energy that wants to move through the human system can finally move through because they found a place where there's no judgment and there's nothing required of them except for their heart-based pure presence, just like a horse. And to me, that is a gift that we don't get very often. I think of, there have been teachers in my life when just walking up to them and speaking to them would bring tears to my eyes because there was something about who they were and how they held their space and how they held their heart energy that made it safe for me to do that. Now, when I'm working with horses, it's the same thing, but magnetized at a very high level. And then for me, I'm very fortunate. I have a herd of horses that have been doing this for a long time. And so we have a very congruent environment where my programs are. And so, many people come to the ranch and they're already starting their process before they've even landed because they're already stepping into that space. They're already stepping into the way of the horse, which is really a beautiful thing. So sorry, I'm kind of rambling, but I hope you're enjoying it.
I'm enjoying it very much. So, yeah, I just love the passion behind your voice as you speak about the way of the horse. I've seen it myself, so I have that passion as well. For my audience, I always like to share, some strategies that people could start working with the horse as to help. And we'll link in our show notes to your books. Although I don't think the Pathways to Radiant Healing is on Amazon anymore. Are you still printing those?
It's Pathways to a Radiant Self.
Radiant Self. Okay.
And it should be on Amazon. If not, I'm going to have to check that out.
Okay. Well, we'll link to it. And because I love both of those books, all of the information that you've put out is very helpful. So we'll definitely link to those. And we'll link to your website too, and to the retreat if there's any room still in January. I know that sells out fast. But are any strategies, any other things that people could start connecting with? Because oftentimes, because not everyone understands this relationship with the horse, and not every ranch, equestrian center, things like that work with them the same way. What are some other resources or ways that people could start getting connected?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I definitely want to give everybody the 4 steps to the present before we leave the call today.
Okay.
Beyond that, attending something like our annual retreat and conference in Tucson, Arizona is a great way, as you found out, to step into this world and experience it firsthand, because there's nothing like experiencing it firsthand. I think you would agree, right?
Oh, definitely. My biggest takeaway was not just the personal development, but it was reinforcing my own gifts of healing. I had, just for you to know, and I'll share this with the audience. My friend who went with me, she is a cranial sacral therapist and a chiropractor, and she was so excited to meet Sandy out there. And I happened to, and I always know that things happen for a reason. And for that second day, the only thing that was left that I hadn't already registered for, or, it was already full, was the cranial sacral on horses. And I thought, well, I don't know cranial sacral, but I do Thai massage, I do yoga therapy. And it was just kind of this self-doubt of, is this for me? And that by far, doing craniosacral on a horse, I had gray cloud, was the most profound experience for me that I would love to get trained in that. So even when you don't even know what, those kind of experiences that just blow your mind, that was something that happened for me out there. So there was I can't say enough about your retreat. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, there are still a few spots left this year. So if any of the listeners want to attend, they just need to go to the Coaching with Horses website and go to the conference and retreat page. But I want to touch base on, what you've shared about the healing with horses. What I have found, and I was just out in California, I'm going to be doing a program out near San Luis Obispo in March. And the morning I left, I woke up, I was like, I need to go back down to the horses, and was called by one of these horses to go work with him. And I was standing next to him, and I have a process that I do. I'll do the 4 steps to the present. I'll approach the horse very conscientiously and really see where the edge of their energy field is. And I always wait at that edge to see if they want to engage with me or not. And when I did that with this horse, he came right over. Then he stood there, and I placed my left hand in his heart area and my right hand around his withers, not on his skin though, but about 6 inches off. So I was trained in polarity therapy, another energy healing modality. And so I stood there, and we started to go somewhere together. Basically, his head dropped, his eyes started to get soft, he started to let out air. I started to, really feel the sun on my face. I started to get more and more present in the moment, feeling my feet on the ground. And then all of a sudden, my body started to do this little circular swaying motion, which I often experience when I feel like I'm in that 0 point place, when I feel like I'm fully connected into the field, connected to the divine, and my brain is no longer running the show. And I stood there for a while and let my body go. And it was really a beautiful, amazing experience. It was really a gift. And the lady that owned the ranch was with me. So at one point, when it started to diminish, I looked at her and I said, I don't know if that was for me or if that was for him. And so what happens often when we're with horses in this way, that we're getting fully present, because any healer that's doing healing work on a horse or a human being, the true healers are getting to that place of full presence when they're not trying to fix anything. And I wasn't trying to fix this horse at all. I was just told to put my hands there and was drawn to do that, and then stood there, and the energy began to move. And I had no attachment to what was happening and who it was for. It was simply a communion of presence that resulted in movement of energy. And when we do that, no matter what modality we're using, that's what the result's going to be. And it's the shutting off of that busy brain. It's the shutting off of, do I have the technique right? It's the shutting off of, I've got to fix this, or what's wrong with this horse. That one always sends me when people are approaching with, what's wrong with the horse? And it's like, well, probably nothing. There's a reason why, that phrase, healthy as a horse, exists. And so that experience, again, whether we're approaching it through, okay, I want to learn how to heal with horses, heal horses, or have horses heal me, eventually it all becomes one thing. And it's, again, getting above all of the human ego desires, demands, old programming, and moving into a space that I call the unified field, or I would refer to it as the unified field. The unified field has been already, called that by somebody else, if you know what I mean. But it's getting into that place, and that's where all sorts of stuff can happen. So anyways, had to just do a little side.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that. That's really magical. I mean, there's no other way to describe that. And I want you to share, you talked about the 4 steps to the present. So I really love for you to dive into that. And if there's any links, we can talk afterwards, and I can link in the show notes. But if you want to share those 4 steps to the present with the audience?
I sure will. And before I do that, I just want to mention that anybody who's listening that wants to get on the path, definitely pick up Hope from the Heart of Horses, How Horses Teach Us About Presence, Strength, and Awareness. And that can be bought now in hardcover or soft cover. So that is a great way for people to get into the work if they can't travel. Also, on my website, they'll find under the store link a horse wisdom library where there's, I don't know, 40 hours of audio tapes about the work, about different aspects of engaging with horses. So that's an amazing product that somebody could pick up if they can't travel. And obviously, coming and doing the work firsthand is the best, as you experienced at our conference, because you're on land with 100 horses, all of those with this huge heart field. That's some pretty powerful energy there, and that's what we create at that conference, along with the programs at my place. So, for those people that are listening that have their own horses, or really any animal, or even want to become more conscious on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment level, I suggest that they use my 4 steps to the present. And I'm going to give you the 4 steps here, but I would invite everybody to definitely go to my website and, again, go to the store page where they can find this 4 steps to the present package. And I think we're running a special on it this month, actually. So I think, it's really a great little package to get at a great price. It's, under $20 or something. So essentially, I'm going to give the steps, but anybody who wants to use it, I, again, recommend they go and get the little home study. It will be very helpful to them. It's 47 marked down to 27. The fourth, yeah, it's a great deal. And it will give a lot more explanation, and it has a little webinar with it. It's really cool. So the 4 steps to the present I developed because I needed to get more present every day in my life. And so I just decided to develop a practice. This is not a meditation. It's a way to say, what am I doing right now? What am I thinking? What am I feeling right now? And when you notice, like if you were to set your cell phone to go off every 10 minutes and you ask yourself these 4 questions, you would find out, or anybody who's listening would find out, what their propensities are with their emotional state of being and their mood. We all know that whatever our emotional state of being is and whatever mood we're holding, we're going to create that and create it and create it and create it. And often we're very unconscious of it. These 4 steps also are incredibly valuable for anybody who's listening who does have horses and wants to create a different dialogue and connection with their horse. Again, it's about creating presence, and it's about being conscious of who we are in that moment. So the 4 steps are, the first question you ask yourself is, where am I in my body? And the answer would be something like my throat, my heart, my stomach, my solar plexus, my head, or over to the left side of my body. I'm not even in my body. We don't try to change any of it. We simply notice. The second step is, what is the energy and emotion that's there? So we identify sensation, if you can, which is a warmth, tingling, expansion, contraction, hard, cold, tight, pulled in. And then what emotion is with that? I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm feeling joyful, I'm feeling expanded, I'm jealous. And we don't judge anything that we're feeling. And so many people, if they are like, oh my God, I'm angry. Well, little girls are not supposed to be angry. I better change that fast. And my thing is, don't change it yet. Notice it first. Let's see where the roots of that is. And then the third question that a person would ask themselves is, well, what am I thinking? So say you're at the bank and you're waiting in line and you start to do the 4 steps of the present. Maybe you find yourself in your solar plexus. You've got butterflies or adrenaline, or you're contracted. And then you ask yourself, well, what am I thinking? And you're thinking thoughts like, why isn't this line moving faster? I got lots of things to do today. What's up with that person? They're taking too much time, or there's not enough tellers, right? All that sort of dialogue we have. And then the 4th step is to simply notice the breath. Just notice the breath. And if you're having that experience that I just outlined at the bank, your breath is probably short. It's probably in the upper part of your body. It's probably tight, constricted. So in that moment, standing in the bank, I get to see that I've gone down the rabbit hole of judgment. I've created in myself a less than heartful state of being. I'm creating stress, and I'm creating a dialogue and a feeling state in my body that's going to activate in my system. And through that, all I'm going to get is the same thing I'm activating in my system. So we want to go through the 4 questions and we want to notice that. And then by all means, afterwards, we can say, wait a minute, I think I'll change my thought pattern right now. Or wait a minute, I think I'm going to take a couple of deep breaths and change the energy that's starting to arise in my body. Or, wait a minute, I'm going to notice that stomach area a little bit more and just see if I can become friends with it versus trying to get away from it. And in those moments that we do that, we start to deprogram ourselves. We start to uncondition ourselves. If I'm standing with a horse and I'm doing that, then more than likely, if I'm doing it and I'm doing it authentically and sincerely, I'm going to probably see my horse drop its head a little bit. It might lick and chew a little bit. It might move towards me. Even if I've done this when I've been in fear, I've done this when I've been in grief or sadness, as you've probably read in my book, when I worked with Flash, she walked all the way across the field to come next to me when I was getting present in my grief. And so getting present and being real creates congruency, which creates safety for the horses, and they're going to be more apt to be okay with being in your presence. Versus if I leave the bank, I never did my 4 steps, I'm irritated because it took so long, it took a half an hour away from me with my horse time. Then I get to the barn, I rush out to the pasture, and I want to get my horse because I'm a half an hour behind, and when I get back into that barn, I just want to get going on with things. More than likely, I'm going to go to the pasture, the horse is going to walk away from me, going to be more difficult for me to put that halter on the horse and come back to the barn. If I am that lucky to do all that, probably my ride is going to be much less than rewarding, because that horse is not going to be as comfortable with me because I'm not congruent. Mm-hmm. So these 4 steps to the present is a dialogue, an inner dialogue to become congruent. The important thing is to never judge oneself for whatever state of being that they're creating. It's simply to notice, take a breath, notice the breath, and then decide what changes want to be made.
Thank you so much, Kathy, for sharing that. I think that'll be very helpful for our listeners, and we'll definitely link to that on your website. So if they want to do the webinar and the recordings and things like that, as well as to your books and all the horse wisdom you have on your website, I really appreciate all the things that you've shared today. I think it's going to be very helpful for everyone. And what's really great about this podcast and when I interview amazing people like you is that if I'm talking to someone trying to explain, why I love horses, why I include them in things that I do, and in my yoga studio, and we included a trip to my friend's ranch during the 2nd module of teacher training. So when we're talking about svadhyaya and understanding yourself, like why I include this, now I can go listen to this episode with Kathy Pike, and where you can explain it even more beautifully and have all these resources and stuff to go deeper on that path with horses. So I really appreciate you being here.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm always honored in any way that I can help humans and help the horses. I'm all over that, as you can tell. I go kind of fast because I get so excited to be able to share as much as I can.
Yeah, but it's great. Your passion shines through, and because you've aligned yourself and gone with the flow of what you've done in your life, aligned yourself with what's in your heart. I mean, all of the things that you're sharing resonate with so many people, and it's just amazing what you've built. It certainly resonated with me, and I appreciate you for that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you again this year at the conference and to be able to share some time together.
Oh, me too. Me too. I can't wait. I can't believe it's only a few months away. All right. Well, thank you, Kathy. I appreciate you being on.
Thank you so much for allowing me to be part of what you're creating. I'm very honored, and I hope that what we've talked about today can change people's lives and, of course, affect the horses' lives in a positive and expansive way. So thank you for what you're doing.
You're welcome. Thank you, Kathy. I really appreciate it. Have a wonderful day.
All right. You too. Bye-bye.
And just a reminder, this episode is sponsored by my upcoming 8-week Wild Wisdom yoga therapy program beginning in January. If you're ready to try a new holistic approach to address the root cause of your chronic pain, anxiety, depression, or habitual patterns that you're ready to let go, and finally get back to living the life you desire, you'll want to join me for this incredible program using yoga, breathing exercises, meditation, and chakra balancing. Go to alyssafinnig.com/online program to learn more. And one last thing, are you subscribed to my podcast? If you're not, I encourage you to do so today so you're the first to hear when the next one is live every Thursday. Take a few seconds, hit the subscribe button on your phone now, or go to alyssafinnig.com/podcast and make sure you get on the email list to get notified when a new episode is available. I cannot wait to see you again. Same time, same place next week. Wild blessings.